Okay, so I would like to point out a certain problem with CSS, which is related to the order of how the rules are applied, the styling is applied, which makes CSS unreasonably difficult to use, and it could be fixed with a relatively simple mechanism, which I will show a prototype of here. So the problem is this. Now, if we have an HTML element which has some styles applied to it, let's say two classes here. It's a paragraph and has two classes called red and underblue applied to it. These classes are defined in the CSS. It could be an external file, but to keep it simple, we just define it in the same file. But this is related. The problem is directly related to this, the fact that it is so separated. I mean, CSS is supposed to be about separating of content from style, but it's actually, I think, a mistake to put. I mean, the idea is good, but the framing is not necessarily good, because you don't want to separate, you want to abstract the style from content. And maybe because we think in terms of like separation, like total separation or whatever. I mean, it's like really overzealous with this separation. Maybe that's why this feature is missing, which I want to talk about here. So anyway, we have two classes, underblue and red, and they apply some properties to this paragraph. This is actually taken from, I mean, a little modified from an example on MDN, which is actually supposed to describe how this works in CSS, what determines the order of the application of the rules. Anyway, so we have those two classes here, which are a little more complicated than in this example, because I want to show how they interact with each other. So one makes the text color red, another makes the text color light blue, and also adds an underline to the text. So if we apply both of these classes, the result we will get is this: red text with an underline. This is because first the underblue class was applied to it, changing the color to light blue, adding the underline, and then the red class was applied, changing the color to red. And in effect, the combination of those two rules is what we see here. So far so good, I guess. But how is the order determined, and how can we change it? So if I would like to swap these two classes, for example, if I would like the red to be applied first, I mean, if I didn't know anything about how this works, I could think maybe I'm just looking at the source, and I would like to manipulate the colors or the styles. Let's swap these two and maybe it will work. But it doesn't, because the order in which those classes are specified here is completely irrelevant. Instead, the order in which they are specified, they are defined basically in the CSS file or whatever style section, that is what determines. I mean, it's not even that simple, because there's specificity and different selectors, and I mean, there's an unreasonable amount of complication, and we just have to know it. But that's the problem. I mean, nobody really can do that very well in practice, which means, well, that this is not good design, essentially. But it could be better, and I will show how. So, but first, let's see what happens if we change the order of these two. So I just moved the red above the under blue, and now I refresh this, and it is indeed, the color is light blue. So this rule completely overrode this one. And if we swap these, nothing changes, because this is completely irrelevant. Okay, and now let's see the same thing, except in the system that I am developing here. We'll just rewrite all this stuff into this syntax. We can just copy that here, and these also we can copy. So that covers the style. And now to achieve the same paragraph, we can write it like this: red under blue, and then we put the text in it. Okay, and we can click convert, and we see that the generated HTML is pretty much the same as what we have written manually here. So yeah, this is the style section, which is the same as this. The difference is that it's the style element is specified like this instead of with the open and close tags. And then we have the paragraph. As we can see, it's exactly the same, exactly like that one. So as we can see, this is the same thing as the previous one. And if we render that, indeed the result is also the same. And if we manipulate the order of these rules, we get the same result as we discussed previously. But what I would like to have here is actually to be able to locally, without touching the style, I would like to be able to locally change the order in which these rules are applied. And a mechanism that I have implemented for doing that is called decorators, and it's actually very similar to programming language decorators. And we can use JavaScript actually to define a decorator. For example, we can define a red decorator, and what it will do is it will use a built-in decorator called concat, which appends to a style of an element just color red. So it's very similar actually to this red class here that we defined here. We can use some indentation. And another decorator we'll define under blue. We just want to mirror these classes. And what it does is it applies the concat and gives it style, well, basically the same as this thing. Oops. Yeah, more like this. Okay, and now let's create a second paragraph. I guess we can just put this here. So, and instead of applying those classes, I will apply these two decorators. So let's say I say red, and then I say under blue. Okay, and now I convert it, and as we can see, something happened here, which the syntax coloring is actually not handling very well. But that's a problem with the syntax coloring, not with the generated HTML. It's actually valid HTML to put new lines in inside of the value of an attribute. And we can render this, and the result is the same, exactly the same. But because actually the concat decorator has just appended to style first the under blue, I just pasted this into style, and then the red, as we can see here. So because of how the browser interprets the style attribute, if we use the same attribute twice, then the last occurrence wins, which is okay, and actually what we want. But so what we can do here, unlike in CSS, we can swap these decorators, and then if we convert, we can see that actually, well, I guess we need the semicolon here. I mean, it's pretty crude, it doesn't do any checking at this point, but just concatenate strings and whatever. But the point is here is to show the idea. So yeah, if we now convert it, we can see that first the color, the red decorator was applied, and then the under blue, because decorators are applied like the one that is closest to the element that is decorated is applied first, and then to the result of applying this decorator, the next decorator is applied, and so on. If we had many decorators, they would be applied in always this order. So we can rely on this order, unlike on the order of CSS classes. And this is a major improvement in quality of life. This sort of thing should be in CSS. I mean, it should have been there from the start, I think. Because that's how we expect things to work in a programming language. And CSS just unnecessarily threw away all the good stuff from programming languages and replaced it with its own model, which is just completely different and overly complicated. I mean, the precedence rules in CSS are so much more complicated than any precedence rules for operators in programming languages. So it's pretty crazy. So yeah, we can see that this is actually applied in the order that we have specified here, and the result is this. So by just swapping around these decorators locally next to the element that they are applied to, we can actually determine the order of application. We don't have to figure it out from the style sheet and what order the style sheets are imported into our document, and do they use important. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a hack in CSS where you can specify that some rule is more important, and then it will overwrite the this mechanism. But then if multiple rules are important, then we're still back to the same thing. So it's just another layer of complication. And we have user agent style sheets, we have some other type of style sheets, and I mean, we're supposed to keep track of all these, or I mean, we could use tools help definitely, but why do that if we could just have a simple mechanism like this? This should be the default, and then we could layer some more complicated rules on top of that. So yeah, and that's basically it, I think, for now, because I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be and longer. So that is that. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you and see you later.